find a seat that's comfortable. We'll take some time to explore what it means to meet our experience with a bit more care and responsiveness. Not trying to get rid of anything, not trying to force the mind into a particular state, but learning how to recognize what's here and gently adjusting our relationship to it. As a reminder, this practice is not about having a perfect meditation. It's about becoming a little more familiar with the patterns of the mind and beginning to respond to them with a bit more understanding. The meditation will begin and end at the sound of the bell. Allowing the body to come into a position that feels supportive, upright but not rigid, relaxed but not collapsed. Invitation to close your eyes or have a soft gaze on the floor in front of you if that feels better. And we'll start with a brief body scan. Easing the forehead, relaxing your brows, unclench the jaw, letting the shoulders soften, the hands resting easily, finding some ease in the chest as it expands with each inhale and contracts with each exhale. Softening the belly, letting gravity do its thing. There's nothing you need to hold up right now. Bringing attention into the body, noticing where you're making contact with the cushion or chair, and just letting your body support you here. Let awareness land on something simple and steady. If it feels available, beginning to notice the breath. Not needing to change it or deepen it. Just recognizing that it's already happening. Allowing the breath to be a gentle anchor. Something you can return to again and again without force during this practice. And when the mind wanders, as it will, just noticing that and returning to the breath. No judgment, no need to get it right, just beginning again. From this place of settling, the breath again always being our anchor, we can begin to open our awareness a bit more. Not just focusing on the breath, but noticing the overall experience of this moment. You might gently ask yourself what this feels like right now. What is the mind doing? Is the energy low or high? Does it feel steady or scattered? Are you pulled in different directions? Or does the mind feel stuck? And there's no need to name it perfectly. Even a vague sense of what's happening is enough. And if nothing stands out, that's okay too. This is simply the practice of tuning in, of recognizing what's here without needing to change it. And as you continue sitting, you might begin to notice certain patterns becoming a bit familiar. Maybe the mind feels a little heavy or foggy. Does it feel hard to stay connected? Or maybe there's a sense of restlessness, which is very typical for my mind. The mind moving quickly, jumping from one thing to another. And rather than just noticing these states, we might begin to gently explore how we're meeting them. If the mind feels sluggish or low energy, you might experience with inviting a bit more alertness. This could be as simple as slightly straightening the posture. Sometimes opening the eyes a bit can bring some energy, or bringing a bit more pointed interest to the breath. Almost as if you're gently waking the mind up, but without force. And if the mind feels busy or restless, you might try meeting it from the opposite. Maybe letting the body soften a bit more, feeling the weight of the body where it's supported, allowing the breath to be natural and unhurried. Meeting our restless mind with the permission to settle, rather than trying to make it settle. And if you notice the mind maybe doing a push or pull, maybe wanting something to be different or resisting what's here, maybe you can see what it might be like to just pause right here, to feel that moment without immediately following it. No needing to resolve it, just recognizing it is part of the experience. And if your mind has a sense of doubt or uncertainty, maybe try to simplify, coming back to something very immediate, one breath at a time, one sensation, one point of contact in the body. Letting the mind rest in something direct, rather than trying to figure everything out. And a reminder that you're not trying to get any of this exactly right. This practice is more of an exploration, a way of beginning to listen to the mind and respond in small, supportive ways. And over time, you may start to notice that even subtle shifts in how you relate can change the whole experience. Not because the mind becomes perfect, but because your relationship to it becomes more balanced, more steady, a bit more kind. Allowing this guidance to fall into the background now and sitting with whatever's present. Continuing to notice the breath or body as the anchor, while also allowing awareness to include the changing patterns of the mind. And if it feels helpful, you can continue softly naming what's here: restless, doubt, push or pull. Or you can simply rest in awareness as experience comes and goes, meeting whatever arises with as much ease as is available, and remembering there's no right or wrong way for this to unfold. Nothing like summertime on Michigan Ave. Lots of sounds to practice with. Appreciate everyone's practice. It's like one of my favorite parts is meditating in community. It always feels so good. So over the first 2 weeks of this series, we've been building a foundation for understanding wise effort. In the first week, we explored effort as part of the path, not as willpower or productivity, but as a relationship. And then last week with Andrew, we looked at the two extremes, so overstriving and complete collapse, and how both can show up in practice and in daily life. Now this week, we'll be moving a little closer to actual lived experience, moving into the question, what does wise effort look like when I'm actually in the middle of something difficult, when I'm losing my shit? And that's the heart of this week. The Buddha offered the teaching of the Five Hindrances as a way of understanding the energies and patterns that cloud the mind, We've definitely explored them before in group, but this week we'll sort of look at it through the lens of wise effort. And these hindrances are not signs that something has gone wrong. Like, I think the word hindrance feels like quite aggressive. It's not like proof that we're failing at something. It's just part of the territory of being human and living life. And they're some of the most common ways that the mind gets pulled off balance. So wanting, resisting, restlessness, dullness, doubt. And part of what makes these teachings so useful is that it gives us language for what otherwise can feel quite like vague or personal or confusing. So tonight we'll explore 3 things: how the hindrances help us understand the type of energy present in the mind, how wise effort becomes responsive rather than rigid, and how naming and working with these mental states can help us shift from reactivity to relationship. So first, one of the most supportive things about the hindrances is that they help us to stop taking every mental state so personally, which is certainly easier said than done for me. My mind loves to make everything personal. I was like the repeated reminder of my mother growing up is to like let something roll off my back, and I carried all of it right here all the time. And so often when we're struggling, the mind immediately moves towards like self-judgment. We think, why am I like this? Why can't I focus? Why do I keep getting caught up in X, Y, or Z? Why does my meditation practice feel so hard? But the hindrances invite a different question. Instead of asking, what's wrong with me? We begin asking, what is the feel of the energy right now in my mind, in my body? And that's a really different relationship. And when we're able to explore and name the energy of the mind, that naturally impacts where we direct our effort. Because when we look closely, each hindrance has a kind of energetic tone to it. And so I'm going to go through the 5 hindrances. So sloth and torpor can feel like low energy. A fogginess, a heaviness, collapse, disconnection. And I find that I'm often in this state at like the end of a work day. Like my day has taken everything from me, and now I'm like in my home bubble and I'm just feeling like a complete collapse, which makes my direction of effort pretty non-existent sometimes. Like that's the natural path of what I want to do is just, okay, disconnect, got no effort to give. Restlessness can feel like too much energy. So agitation, urgency, spinning, bouncing from one thing to the next. And for me, this is like my anxious energy. This is like the urgency that my mind creates in needing to find like control and consistency and preparation for like every potential outcome in my life. And that makes the direction of wise effort feel really hasty. Like I need to know or I need to do right now. I need to have a plan. I need to put that effort towards something immediately. And desire and aversion can be understood as misdirected energy. So energy that is pulling towards what feels pleasant or pushing against what feels unpleasant. And I feel like this type of energy shows up for me when I'm uncomfortable. Like I don't want to be neither here nor there. That option doesn't sound good. This one doesn't either. There's too much uncertainty happening. And I wrote down, because this is what I got distracted with at work today, like when I'm shopping for the Sephora sale, I'm adverse to spending money, and yet I desire buying all the things. And it keeps me perpetually in the position of like adding to cart, and then like nothing's happening on either end. I'm not getting the thing, and I'm also not spending money. And doubt can feel like stuck energy. So I'm caught in a loop, unable to sort of land, unable to trust or move. And I experience a lot of doubt when I think about my future. Thinking about my future becomes like a very existential experience, like what's next? The state of the world is upside down. Like it makes it hard to have trust in any sort of decision that I'm making. And so my effort feels like a stalled engine. Like, I don't have the ability to go in any one way. I don't trust it. And so these can help us see that the mind is not just good or bad. It's not this like black and white swinging pendulum, focused or unfocused, that there are conditions here. There are patterns. There are energies. And once we begin to recognize those patterns, even in simple ways, there's often a little bit more space, a little less shame, a little more clarity. And the Buddha's teachings are often so compassionate in this way. They don't ask us to become superhuman. They help us understand what it means to be human. They give us ways to recognize what's happening in real time so that we're not completely fused with what's happening in real time. And I think that's important because many of us have learned to interpret our inner experience through judgment rather than curiosity. I know I have, certainly. And if the mind is tired, we call ourselves lazy. If the mind is restless, we're bad at doing something. We don't have enough discipline. If doubt is present, we assume something's wrong with us. But this teaching helps reframe all of that. We can begin to see these states as conditions arising in the mind, not as permanent truths of who we are. Bell Hooks writes, "Rarely, if ever, are any of us healed in isolation. Healing is an act of communion." A reminder that the hindrances are not your individual private flaw. These are common human patterns, and naming them can in itself be a form of reconnecting with reality, with our practice, with one another. And so once we begin to recognize the tone of the mind in the present, the next question becomes, what does wise effort ask of us now? And this is where the teaching gets really practical. So I think someone last week was like, okay, so we know about wise effort, no striving, no collapsing, like what do I do with it? This is kind of moving into that. If effort were just a matter of trying harder, then the same strategy would work all the time, right? But that's not how practice works, and it's not how human beings work. What supports us when the mind is dull is not necessarily what supports us when the mind is restless. What helps when there's collapse may not help when there's overactivation. And this is why wise effort has to be responsive to meet conditions. It has to sort of ride the wave of life. If my mind is foggy and disconnected, I probably don't need more soothing. It's like a recipe for sleep for me, for depression. Instead, wise effort would tell me that I need more energy. Maybe opening the eyes, straightening the posture, reconnecting with purpose, taking maybe a walking meditation instead of a sitting one. And if I'm restless or I have anxiety, pushing harder usually doesn't help. It hurts. So what may be needed instead of softening is instead a softening rather, and slowing down, a grounding, returning to the body, allowing the nervous system to settle. If I'm in that uncomfortable push and pull between desire and aversion, the practice may be to notice the push and pull without immediately obeying them. To feel what it's like to want. To feel what it's like to resist. To notice how much energy gets consumed in chasing, managing, arranging, controlling. I waste a lot of energy doing that. And if my doubt about the future is present, ironically, maybe the invitation is to simplify, to come back to one breath, one sensation, one moment, not to solve the whole path, but to stay right here, one step. And this is the reason I think week 3 of this series is so important. We've sort of explored those theoretical parts, and now it becomes, what do I do? And the answer is not apply more force. The answer is closer to listen more carefully. Wise effort is not rigid. It's intelligent. It's having an attunement. It's being in relationship. And it's knowing that those different conditions of life will require different responses. This also connects with emotional regulation. So a lot of the suffering that we experience not only comes from the state itself, but also how quickly we react to it. We don't just feel restless, we panic about being restless. I don't know if anyone's ever had trouble sleeping, and then you just think about the stress of sleeping. It's like, oh, another hour. Okay, I have 7 hours. Okay, now I have 6. The panic of trying to fall asleep makes that whole thing so much worse. We don't just feel dull, we collapse into a story about ourselves. We don't just feel doubt, we let it turn into disconnection. Emotional regulation doesn't mean never having feelings or feeling things. It means learning how to recognize them and staying present enough to not escalate them, and being able to respond in a way that supports our steadiness. When I think of some of the most stressful periods in my life, in hindsight, I can see that there was force involved. I was forcing something. That could be trying to force external factors like the apartment I need to find or move into, or, the relationship with a friend. It might be forcing myself to save face, to just not fall apart. But the common thread is that I'm forcing something. And it's easier to say now, of course, with time and perspective and tools gathered from the teaching of the Buddha, but that layer of force really added a level of difficulty to those experiences. Forcing things never made anything better. And it's certainly not something I'm perfect at now, but I can see that as I attempt to release more, to be more gentle with myself and my approach to my own mind, it does give me the ability to shift perspective. Pema Chodron said, "You are the sky, everything else is just the weather." When we have less identification with the energies of our mind, the weather, we can begin to meet every sunny sky, every thunderstorm or windy day with wise effort. And as we learn to recognize these patterns and respond more skillfully, another important shift begins to happen. We move from being completely inside the hindrance to being in relationship with it. And that space matters. Naming our internal states reduces reactivity. Sometimes just being able to say, this is restlessness, this is doubt, this is aversion. It can interrupt that automatic chain reaction in our brain. It doesn't necessarily make the state disappear, but it can soften the identification, right? Instead of being, I really struggle with this thing, this is aversion. Taking the I out of it. It can reduce the sense that we are the state, and that makes room for choice. So without that pause, we tend to get swept up. The hindrance takes over the whole field of vision. Restlessness becomes the whole truth. Doubt becomes the whole truth. Desire becomes the whole truth. But when mindfulness is present, even briefly, we can begin to recognize, this is what's here right now. Not forever, not all of me, just what's present right now. And this can be a really profound shift in our practice. because the goal is not to be in a perfect space before we use the tools of wise effort. The goal is to learn how to relate to our mind states differently so that it can open up room to make wise effort more clear. And over time, when we continually use these tools, that builds trust. Trust that these states will come and go. Trust that we don't have to obey every impulse of the mind or believe every thought. And trust that we have autonomy to make different choices. And that might be one of the most compassionate things to remember. Difficulty is not an interruption to the path. It is where the path gets lived. Ajahn Chah says, "You are not your thoughts. If you were, you could stop them." So this week, the invitation is not to get rid of the hindrances in your mind. It's not to become someone who never feels restless or doubt or aversion. The invitation is to become more intimate with the mind, more curious about the energies moving through it, more skillful in how we respond and meet them with wise effort, recognizing what's needed right here in the present. And if wise effort in the first week helped us understand effort correctly, and week 2 helped us recognize the extremes of overstriving and collapsing, then this week asks, what does it look like to work skillfully with what is actually here? The 5 hindrances give us language for that. They help us understand that effort meets us through conditions. And they remind us that the practice is not about force. It's about responsiveness and attunement and care. Take what resonates, leave the rest. Thank you for your time.